A tropical disturbance will impact our area this weekend, and another one could be on the way. Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. We'll get right into the latest information on the tropics, including our two invest areas east of the Lesser Antilles and what is now post-tropical storm Cristobal. Let's start with the newest information on Invest 92L. It's the one that is farther off towards the west. The one is going to have the quickest impacts to portions of our area. Now, I do have some good information for you guys on this Thursday. The development chance has dropped from an 80% down to a 60, which is why we have an area of orange right now rather than red. There are still going to be impacts from 92L across the Eastern Caribbean over the weekend, but hopefully we don't get a very strong system and maybe not even a closed center of circulation. We've yet to see that. There is some drier air on the southwest side on this visible infrared sandwich product here, two satellites in one, if you will. You can see that there's not a ton of organization right now, and we're fighting some shear and drier air on the western side. This is all great news as the storm continues to push its way off towards the west. So this broad disturbance will move into the Lesser Antilles late Friday evening and throughout the weekend with some impacts, but potentially not become a tropical depression or a tropical storm. It's still a possibility, and I still think there's a better than a 50-50 chance that that happens. Now, based on our models that are running right now, we would expect this storm to mainly move through portions of the northern Windward Islands and the central Lesser Antilles. Those spaghetti plot models are from the Dominique area south to Martinique, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Grenada area. That being said, there is going to be one part of this storm that I expect to have more impacts than others. But if you do live in these areas, expect the weather to begin to go downhill throughout today, late on this Thursday, especially Friday and into Saturday, kicking up wave heights, kicking up rain and squalls across the area. And there's already been some very breezy conditions. I'm going to put on the current temperatures, first of all, that will appear on your screen, and then I'll switch on over to wind gusts. So we'll get the temperatures on for you right now, which are in the upper 80s to right around 90, but we've already had some fresh winds of around 25 to 30 miles an hour, and we're going to locally see those winds pick up with some sea conditions. Now, again, the information hub down below is going to give you all the latest information, watches, warnings, and marine statements, and of course, your 5-day forecast as well. So let's take a look at the European AI Ensemble member plots of Invest 92L. Again, all of those green lines are very weak systems, either tropical depressions at the most strength, very weak tropical storms, or just an open wave that will move through. So again, we're going to get a system coming in, but I do not expect this to wrap up and be an ultimately strong system. When we look at the HMON model, there still are going to be some really strong winds associated with this, but mainly on the northern side. And that's why it's very important as to what islands the center of circulation actually moves through. Right here on the HMON model, you have this mainly affecting places like Martinique and Dominica and Guadeloupe and then areas north. All of that red with winds that could still be around 50 miles an hour are on the northern and eastern side of where that center is. Anywhere south is likely to see much weaker winds, and that would be on this model, places like Barbados and St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago. So ultimately where this center goes, if you live on the north side of that, the opportunity for the strongest winds and some of the heaviest rainfall. Now, I do expect there to be elevated sea conditions across all of the Lesser Antilles, and there are already some marine advisories up, and they're only going to get worse. When we look at the HWRF model, and by the way, the timing of this, weather goes downhill late Friday and especially overnight into Saturday. Both snapshots of these models are going to be late Saturday afternoon, where the likely core of winds begin to move through. Same situation here. This one's a little bit farther south towards St. Lucia and places like Martinique and Dominica up towards Guadeloupe. But the opportunity is going to be the winds are going to be higher near the center and north. Winds will be weaker off towards the south, but still the opportunity for some 40 to 50 mile an hour winds on the HWRF model. So despite the fact that we're not potentially going to have a closed center or a weak depression, some winds could still be elevated in that tropical storm variety for a time. The other factor is going to be some rain. Now look, a lot of you want this rain. And this is a good system. Again, not expecting this to be overtly strong. There's going to be some impacts. This rain could come with the opportunity for some flooding. elevated tidal conditions as well. So we'll have to watch out for high tide cycles. And I can't rule out that we're not going to have some bad impacts, despite the fact that it'll be some beneficial rain. But looking at the rainfall totals across a lot of the Lesser Antilles now, the brunt of the rain is closer to the center of circulation. While the winds could be high in Antigua and Barbuda, if the center goes over at St. Lucia, they're not going to get as much rain for St. Lucia, or Antigua, Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Bart, Sabas, St. Eustatius, St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat, places like that, the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as well. So the core of the rain stays closer to the center, although we'll still have a lot of fresh winds up through Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the Leeward Islands as well. Look at these wave heights. I am anticipating some swells building tomorrow and Saturday through Sunday that will be over 4 meters in height, over 12 feet in height. If you look at these significant wave heights, over 15 feet 4 times. That is not the peak wave heights. That is kind of the average of these significant waves coming in. So long period easterly swells, again, mainly favoring the north side here with all that wind turning counterclockwise around that broad low. It'll still be rough sea conditions back down towards the Windward Islands, but probably more elevated St. Lucia areas north, and this would include the Leeward Islands here. So Windward Islands, a little bit lower waves, but still some problems. Places like Barbados likely to see some big issues out of that system as well. So kind of recapping what I expect from Invest 92L. It's likely to become or potentially a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm. Dolly is the next name. Will remain generally weak, but impacts will be felt. Mainly winds of 40 to 50 miles an hour, 2 to 4 inches of rain, 50 to 100 millimeters, locally higher and very rough sea conditions, 3 to 4 meter sea heights, maybe even 9 to 12 feet plus in some areas. Again, we're looking at this point in time, some fresh winds right now. Weather begins to go downhill Friday and especially through Saturday and early on Sunday. Now, of course, that's not the only one. We looked at the impacts, so that's our next weather headline. We also have the potential for impacts from Invest 94L. So let me bring up that and show you guys. Invest 94L is on the heels of Invest 92. Same situation, 50% chance for the most part. This one down the road has a little bit better opportunity to organize as it traverses the main development region of the Atlantic. Still disorganized showers and storms, but a little bit better clustering here, and overall conditions appear to be a bit more favorable down the road. So while 92L out to the west is going to be fighting a lot of wind shear, that wind shear is likely to relax before it gets into the Eastern Caribbean. These are your spaghetti plots from 94L. So this is 92L down here through the Lesser Antilles. 94L is going to take a farther north latitude turn. But there is the opportunity that down the road early next week, we could have a close brush for the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, maybe as far south and west as Puerto Rico, although the majority of the models try and have this recurve just north and to the east of Antigua and Barbuda. Let me show you what the European ensemble members look like on this one for you guys. Sorry, I'm all over the place here with some of these graphics. So this is 94L on the AI of the European ensembles. We would potentially down the road have to monitor the situation just east of places like the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, because it's likely to only gather strength as it moves into the Western Atlantic Basin. So this is 94L, and then on the heels of that, not even emerging off the West African coast yet, potentially down the road late next week, another system to monitor here in the main development region of the Atlantic. So 92L dies very quickly. Here comes 94L, close brush to the Leeward Islands, strengthening as it gets into the Western Atlantic. Places like Bermuda would have to pay very close attention to that. And then a third system potentially trying to develop late next week. When we look at the AI ensemble members of Invest 94L, again, we now have an Invest. So now all of our tropical models are running on this one as well. You can see that the ones that hold it together do have it mainly north and east of the Leeward Islands. That being said, they're a little bit stronger. Those blue lines are lower pressures, and that would definitely be a tropical storm. Now, Dolly is the next named storm. If we don't get it out of 92L, we could potentially get it out of 94L. So that's the situation with our two areas of interest right now. Again, if you live in the Lesser Antilles, you should expect some impacts across the area over the weekend. If you have questions about the forecast as far as that goes, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. I do want to touch on real quickly post-tropical storm Cristobal. Yes, again, we got the C-name storm of the Atlantic hurricane season, but I told you in yesterday's video, Cristobal was likely not to linger very long. Sea surface temperatures weren't going to be supporting this, wind shear and all of that. And basically Cristobal is done. No impacts land. We're not going to have any additional advisories on Cristobal, so you can kind of, wipe your hands as far as Cristobal goes for right now. Let's move on to the rest of the forecast. We'll talk about what's impacting our area for right now and what I expect ahead as well. If you're getting anything out of this video, I do appreciate taking a quick second and hitting that subscribe button for me right now. Again, if you've got a question, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. Appreciate all the members of the channel as well. You're now going to get your marine forecast. So you looked at your 5-day forecast. You have some marine interests. Keep an eye out for those maximum wave heights in some of the areas in the Eastern Caribbean. Those are going to be elevated as we get into Friday. So now moving on, what is the active weather for today? What does the rain outlook appear to be, including the opportunity for those heavier tropical downpours in the Eastern Caribbean? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is bring back on those current wind gusts. So temperatures will appear first, and then here comes the winds. Now, out ahead of our tropical system in portions of the Leeward Islands, we're getting some scattered showers moving through Leeward Islands all the way back down to the Windward Islands, but the winds are more fresh, believe it or not, the farther north that you go overall. Don't get me wrong, it's been a brisk day across St. Lucia, Martinique, and Dominica. Guadeloupe has had some strong winds as well. St. Bart's have had winds over 35 miles an hour. Portions of the Virgin Islands right now, 25, 30-mile-an-hour winds there for St. Thomas. Back into portions of Puerto Rico, San Juan, and the Ponce areas. Thunderstorms are redeveloping across the Dominican Republic at the hour. This is bad news. You can see in the information hub down below, we still continue with flash flood issues for places like Santo Domingo, off towards the east, towards San Pedro de Macorís. 2 to 3 inches of rain on a daily basis, 50 to 75 millimeters, causing some problems with some quick flooding areas here. So if you do live along the southern coast of the Dominican Republic and some heavier rain trying to sneak west towards Haiti, please keep that in mind. Again, healthy thunderstorms out there at the hour. Thunderstorms are developing on the southeast side of Cuba. We're trying to get a few more thunderstorms to develop over Jamaica today. It's been great to hear from my friends in Jamaica talk about the rain on the eastern and southeast side of the island areas, desperate for some rain. Thunderstorm at sea warning is currently in effect, and a large wave and strong wind advisory continues for the nearshore and offshore waters of the south coast, including Pedro and Morant Banks. We've had some gusty showers move over the Cayman Islands today, especially Grand Cayman. Look at that 30-mile-an-hour wind gust there. And again, some development here as far as some thunderstorm activity. There is a weak tropical wave coming through. That's just a broad disturbance coming in. Again, it's not going to wrap up into anything, but it's helped to elevate some of the conditions out there. Now, farther north and west, things have actually gotten quieter for today, so it's a better forecast for Quintana Roo on over towards Belize and Guatemala and the northern sides of Honduras. Expecting things to be relatively quiet in the central Bahamas. Then you get to the southeast Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. Thunderstorms have developed there for today. Now, they're beginning to dissipate a bit, but earlier in the day, the Caicos and Grand Turk, good healthy downpours, a fair amount of lightning. You live in this area, you've been impacted by those storms today, let me know in the comments section below. And a couple of thunderstorms are going to try and make a run back into the northwest Bahamas. Look for some thunderstorms dropping south from Walker's Key back towards Grand Bahama, the Abacos, Bimini, potentially Andros and New Providence and Eleuthera could catch a couple of those showers as we get a little bit later in the day. Back out to the broad perspective here, and again, you can see the axis of this tropical moisture extending south. It's going to try and get back to the ABC Islands. I'm not expecting a lot of rain there overall. Breezy conditions are likely to continue, though. Oranjestad, about a 35-mile-an-hour wind. When we talk about these winds, if I just show you guys real quickly here, the sustained winds that I expect, if you see these pink lines, these are 25-knot winds or higher that are likely to continue to blast through as both 92L and then the approach of 94L continue. It's going to be a pretty rough one out there as far as marine interest goes for the entire week ahead. So let's take a look at what I expect rainfall-wise, and then we'll get into the rest of the forecast. We'll start, obviously, with what's happening in the Eastern Caribbean. Again, broad, sloppy system, 92L. Even if it becomes a depression, we're not going to have this core of extremely strong winds out there. So I do expect this to be a beneficial rainmaker, but not entirely positive, because there could still be some areas of flooding, especially during the high tide cycles. But if you've needed some rain, you're going to get that opportunity across the entire Eastern Caribbean, from Trinidad and Tobago up towards Anguilla, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, which has been so hot and so dry, will get some beneficial showers. Now, Now, it may not be as much rain for places like St. Croix and Ponce and San Juan, but we're going to get some scattered showers out of this. That will continue to move off towards the west. It will be a very broad area of showers, just moving into the central Caribbean with nothing organized after that. On the heels of that, this is 94L. Again, doesn't look like much at this point in time, but this would be the next potential system to watch, and we'll see. Does it blow its top before it gets into the Eastern Caribbean, or does it strengthen? The models are kind of all over the place right now as far as that goes. When we look at the European model over the next 5 days, again, here comes 92L late Friday into Saturday. Good to see some red on the map there. You can see the ranges continue to go through. So down the road, portions of Hispaniola and Cuba and Jamaica could get additional tropical downpours out of what is left over of 92L. Still some heavier rain on the southern sides of Central America. More scattered showers for Jamaica, but there's a lot more red on this map than what we've seen lately. But this is a problem. There's a lot more yellows and oranges on this map than what we've seen lately as well. Gale conditions in the open waters of the Caribbean. There's 92L's influence with a lot of 10 to 14 foot wave heights across the Eastern Caribbean, and that would be 94L, and we'll just have to see what happens. I think regardless, mid to late next week is going to really elevate conditions across the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos here. The Western Atlantic Basin in general might get kicked up a notch or two as we get into mid next week. So again, recapping the situation right now, if you're just tuning in, Invest 92L now down to a 60% chance of development, but I do expect whatever it brings, it will directly bring to portions of the eastern side of our area. So we do have to monitor the situation for all of the Lesser Antilles here. And then we have Invest 94L on the heels of that, and how that tracks. This one could ultimately be a little bit stronger. Friends, I'm out of time. I do appreciate you making Meteo Mundo a part of your daily routine. You got a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it down in the comments section below. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll keep you updated. I'll see you tomorrow with the latest forecast. Until then, take care.